Hello. So, this is me being super vulnerable and deciding to share a little bit about myself and my journey to losing 40 kilos and maintaining it now for, I don't know, I guess like 4 years or so, 5 years. So, I thought I would speak a little bit about when I started and what I did to get to the point of starting my weight loss journey and how I did that. I think it's like with anything where you really need to make a change. I feel like you have to get to a place where you absolutely hit rock bottom. And to be honest, I hit that point. I was at the point where I had been overweight for my entire life. Like I was about maybe about 5 years old when I started gaining weight, and I was never a sporty kid. I was always I was honestly overweight. I had a really bad relationship with food. I used to use food as a comfort. I ate a lot of junk food. I think the biggest thing was just not doing enough activity for the amount of food that I was actually consuming, even as a child and especially as a teen. And I think I was eating a lot of ultra processed food, and I didn't have the education or the knowledge to really do anything about it. And I think a lot of my friends were eating similar foods, but I was eating a lot more, and I wasn't moving as much as they were. So it was very easy for me to gain the weight. And I come from a family of a lot of very overweight people as well. And it was just kind of like a natural thing for me to end up that way too. And I tried everything my whole life. I was very aware and very self-conscious of my weight and my appearance as a teenager, and as a in my early 20s. I tried many things. I tried many diets. I had success, and then I would just gain the weight back. In my early 20s, I probably sat at like 90-ish kilos, and I was there for a while, and I wasn't like when I first started nursing, so I would have been like maybe 21. I was in the 80s, and I was feeling okay. Like it wasn't too bad. I was still overweight, but I was feeling okay. But I was at the time a vegetarian, and I was really not eating anything to nourish my body, and I still wasn't doing enough activity, only what I was doing through work. And the weight just kept piling on to the point where then when I had kids at around age 23, 24, I was already overweight going into the pregnancies. And then it was like a case of, oh, now I'm pregnant, I don't have to worry about dieting anymore, because I've been on off dieting my whole life. And during the pregnancies and thereafter, that's when the weight really stacked on. When I had my twins at 37 weeks pregnant, I was weighed in at 127 kilos was the heaviest. That was the day before I had them at my appointment. So I was nearly 130 kilos. And after I had them, I dropped down to about 100 kilos pretty quickly because a lot of it was fluid and baby and all that sort of stuff. And then over the next year, the weight crept back on, and I think I got to the point where I went to the GP when they were just over a year old, and I was like, I'm sick of this shit. Like, I cannot live like this anymore. I felt like I was trapped in my body. I had no energy. I was exhausted. I had nothing to give them. I was pale. I knew how bad my diet was, and I knew that I was lazy and that I didn't move. I started trying to take them for little walks in the pram, but we lived on a hill. We lived on a street with like a slight hill, and I couldn't physically walk with the pram with them in it, like up or down the hill. I could barely walk up or down the hill on my own. And I was like, something needs to fucking give, because I've been stuck in this house now for years. It was just pre-COVID, and I'd had enough. I felt trapped. I literally couldn't sit in my house another day like that. I went to the GP and I said, look, like, I need help. Like, I don't know how to do this. And I said, I know a lot of my friends have had weight loss surgery. I'm looking at the sleeve surgery, like what can be done. And she put me on the scales, and I was 112.5 kilos and 167 centimeters tall, and I was obese, but I wasn't morbidly obese, and I didn't have private health insurance. And because I didn't have any other comorbidities such as high blood pressure or diabetes or like anything like that, she turned around and she said, you just don't meet the criteria to get it done through the public system. So you can either go away and put on more weight, or you can go away and get private health insurance and wait the year, which will still cost you thousands of dollars. And at the time we were living off like a one and a bit income, so I was barely working. And she said, or you can try to lose the weight on your own, like it's up to you. So I remember getting in the car. I will never forget that moment. I got in the car and I burst into tears, and I was like, I think I just have to fucking do this on my own. Like, I think I just have to do this on my own. There's nothing else, like, there's no choice. I can either wait the year for the private health insurance. I can get in a worse position than I am now and gain more weight and end up with like diabetes, which obviously wasn't an option. And I said, or I can just go away and spend the next year doing this on my own. I knew what I wanted. I went home and I really thought about it. And around that same time, I can distinctly recall driving past. There was a park near our house at the time, and I drove past and I saw this girl. It would have been like mid-morning or something, and she was running. She was athletic, you know, and she was in her cute activewear, and she was running, and I was like, wow, like, look at her run. I was like, she would be around my age and she can just freely move, and I'm here, I can't even walk, you know, like I can't even walk to the park barely. And there's her running like that, and I thought, oh my God, imagine if one day I could do that. Like, imagine if one day that was me. And I remember being like, I need to do that. Like, that is exactly what I need to do. At the time, I guess counting calories was really in fashion. I wasn't really on Instagram at the time much, but I decided to use my personal page to follow like other fitness accounts and health accounts, and, you know, look for some healthy meal spo and stuff. And in doing so, I found the Loser app at the time, and I downloaded that, and it, you know, spat out my calories. I think it was like 1,500 calories or something. And I decided to just do that. I was like, that's it. I'll just start tracking my food. I got to the point where I was like, nah, this is it now. Like, that's it, Leah. 1 year. Give yourself a year. You either have a year waiting for private health, or you have a year losing weight, right? So you may as well just do it. And I think it was my ability to then, instead of just looking for the short-term gratification all the time, like we are so used to doing, you know, looking for that quick dopamine hit, looking for something to make us feel better in the moment. I was like, no, I need to look forward, and I need to be able to think, okay, well, in a year's time, how do I want to feel? Okay, I can either feel the same as I do now or worse, or I will be in a really good place, and it's going to take me a year. That's when I just started, and I was very committed to tracking my food. I tracked consistently for months, like months and months. At the time, I didn't know about macros. I didn't know about like protein. I didn't know about any of that shit. And really, I think it was a very high, looking back, because I still have all the all the diary entries. It's pretty cool, really. I was eating around 1,500 calories, and it was lower protein, I guess, maybe like 100 grams, 80, 100 grams a day, which I wouldn't recommend now, but just what I was doing at the time. But really, it was probably a higher fat diet as well. I was eating a lot of like Mediterranean foods, but it was like a lower carb, I would say, diet. And there were a lot of convenience meals in there. I was using like, you know, calorie friendly frozen meals from Coles and Aldi and stuff. I was really just looking at calories, and I was eating a lot of salads, and like trying to bulk up my food through that. Yeah, really, I think for me, the hardest part was just starting. Okay, it took me a couple of months on and off to just start. And then once I started seeing the results, because when you first start, especially when you're at a place where you're quite overweight like I was, the results come pretty quickly. Like, it was pretty cool to see, actually. And I got almost addicted to that feeling of like bettering myself week after week. I was seeing the results, and the results were driving the motivation to continue. A lot of the time I was in lockdown, I started doing little home workouts. I would do like YouTube step workouts. They were very basic, but they were very tiring for me. I would do them when the twins napped and when my boy napped, or with them in the lounge room. We had a tiny, tiny little lounge room, and I would like move the coffee table out the way and just get these like step workouts done in there. I can remember in May, I got my first Apple Watch and I started tracking my steps. That's when I started walking. I just walked and I did my little YouTube video, workouts. But honestly, the number one thing was just tracking my food. I was like, this is the non-negotiable. This is the thing I have to do to progress. Okay. And I just kept thinking of the bigger picture. So there were plenty of times that things would come up that weren't ideal, or like we would have a birthday, or I would get sick, or whatever happened, and it would throw you a little bit off. But the thing I made the non-negotiable was tracking my food and just being really consistent with that. That was it. That was everything. But I think the other thing that I did differently to other things I'd done in the past is I didn't hide it. I didn't hide what I was doing. I didn't have any shame. I forgave myself for getting to that point. I kind of accepted it. Right? I accepted where I was at, and I was no longer ashamed of it. And I thought, you know what? I have to actually get the people around me involved in this too. So for the first time ever in my life, I had no problems with telling people my weight. I always had a lot of shame around my weight. I'd been shamed by my family and my friends a few times, or people around about my weight and the specific number, and like doctors and things like that. So for the first time ever in my life, I was like going around telling people, I was like, yeah, I started at 112 kilos, now I'm 108 kilos, and I was telling people, because in my head, I was thinking, this is the last time I will ever weigh this again. And this was another point. It was accountability. It was another way of me saying, I have to do this now, because I've just fucking told everyone my weight, and I'm deeply embarrassed by that number. So there's no other option than to not be that number again, right? So having people around me, I was telling my work friends, yep, they're like, wow, Leah, like, your dinner looks healthy, or whatever. I would be nursing, doing an afternoon shift, packing my own dinner. And I would say, yep, like, I'm really trying to lose weight. Like, this is it now. And they're like, wow, what are you doing? And I would tell them and show them the app and get everybody else involved. And I think then they would follow up with me the next shift. How's it going? And they were really supportive and really great most of the time. Also, if I slipped up, being okay with saying, you know what, I had some extra chocolate tonight, or whatever, and telling people about it, telling my partner about it, getting him involved in this too, and saying like, hey, you know what, like I can't be around, takeaway and stuff like that in the same capacity that we used to. I'm going to need you to not have that stuff in the house. I had to rid my house of all the stuff that would tempt me, because I wasn't strong enough to have an ice cream tubby in the freezer. It was like, no, we just have to get rid of it. And I had to tell everybody around me. And as I said, it's just a case of you just keep going. You just keep pushing forward. It doesn't matter how many times you fall off the horse. You just need to get back on. And really, that is how I started my weight loss journey. I can't believe now that I lost 40 kilos and maintained it for 4 or 5 years. Really, now it's just my life. Like, it feels normal to me to be the size that I am, but it took a while. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed hearing about how I started my journey. I think I will continue to share different little nuggets of my journey overall. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I can elaborate on that. I can answer those questions and maybe make a little series out of this, but make sure that you do follow along. And when I am recording this, it is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's.